Good morning. Welcome to our first Year 8 lesson, remote teaching thing for Macbeth. The lesson we're going to look at today is called The Examination of Lady Macbeth. Our focus is really on one character today and her importance in the play as a whole. What I'm going to do is work you through these slides as we go, with all the different tasks that you're going to follow along with and complete in your books. As we do that, I'll tell you when to pause, so hit the button at the bottom to pause those videos so you've got time to actually answer the question yourselves. Once you've done that, I'll give you some ideas that you might have included and you can see how well you're getting on. So don't cheat, I'll know. So have a go for yourself. Our starter is, what do you think is the worst thing Lady Macbeth has done in the play? You always must justify your view. For those of you trying to stretch yourselves, there is a stretch task. So why do you think that the Jacobean audience would have thought Lady Macbeth was worse than Macbeth? And lastly, a challenge. If you manage to finish either of those in less than 10 minutes, your challenge is that if Lady Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's most tragic heroines, do you agree or disagree? Can you think of any other characters from the canon of Shakespeare's plays that would have been more tragic? Up to you now to try and answer those questions. So I'm going to pause the video and you are going to pause it too and answer those in your books. So 3, 2, 1, pause. Good, right? Okay. If you've had a go, and I hope you have, be honest with yourself. Only you can help yourself in terms of your development, not me. Your answers might look something like this. Lady Macbeth, you could argue, has forced her husband to act in the way that she cajoled him, encouraged him in Act 1, Scene 7, Act 1, Scene 5, where Macbeth had doubts and he was not so sure about murdering Macbeth. Maybe that's a step too far. She's made him, if you like, she's convinced him to take action. You could say some of the things that she's said, she's told him to look like the innocent flower, be the serpent under it, very Machiavellian, very sneaky and manipulative. Or you could talk about how she claimed to him, to her husband, that she would rather have dashed her own child against the floor than actually broken a promise. So some of the things that she does are pretty bad. Now, if you try the stretch, I'm hoping you have, for some of you certainly, you will have thought about the great chain of being and how men were at a higher level than women were, especially the nobility. So Macbeth as a thane would have had a lot more power than Lady Macbeth, and therefore the audience in the Jacobean era would probably have felt the same way. That they would have felt, well, he's a nobleman. What, he could never do anything wrong, surely. So that's an initial idea that you might have included. In terms of the challenge, you have to think back to your knowledge of other Shakespearean texts, which may or may not be quite limited. So you might look at Miranda in The Tempest and think about how she's perhaps not quite the stereotypical heroine, but it's quite tragic that she has been abandoned on an island with her father, Prospero. Now, she ends up getting married at the end, so her story would be considered more romantic. So perhaps she is less tragic than Lady Macbeth, who's ultimately ends in a downfall. There are many characters through King Lear, through Midsummer Night's Dream, Antony and Cleopatra, a number of different Shakespearean texts that you might think, actually, I'm thinking about Portia in the Merchant of Venice. Is she tragic? Is she not? So I'm hoping you're using some of your other knowledge from different texts to come up with an answer to that question. Right, moving on. So some of the evil things that she's done, we can say very specifically, she has persuaded Macbeth to kill Duncan by stating he'd be a coward if he didn't. So challenging his masculinity. She emasculates him in front of the audience by mocking him and questioning his authority as her husband. She takes those bloody daggers back to the scene of the crime because he's too afraid to do what's required, and smears the blood on Duncan's guards, his groomsmen, to make them look guilty. So these are some evil things that she has done. You definitely go to prison for. Maybe then, maybe not now. But what about Macbeth? Do you think he is more evil or less evil than her? Give yourself some thinking time. Is Macbeth more evil or less evil than Lady Macbeth? Well, I've given you some examples now. So could he be more to blame? Or is she more to blame? Don't know. So some of the things that he's done, we heard straight away before we even met the guy that he has unseen someone from the knave to the chops with his sword in battle, sliced them in half. It's initially him who talks about being ambitious. The idea that Malcolm, who becomes the Prince of Cumberland, and King Duncan says, when King Duncan announces that, Macbeth says, this is a step which he must owe a leap. So he already says that he's ambitious. He needs to become king. He's got to get over that step of prince. So maybe we understand very early on that he's already very ambitious. It's Macbeth who demands that Banquo and Fleance are murdered. It's Macbeth who orders Lady Macbeth, sorry, I always do that, who orders Lady Macduff and her children and their servants all killed just because Macduff flees to England. And it's Macbeth who's more and more bloodthirsty as the play goes on. So he becomes more and more gruesome, more and more brutal. We all already think that perhaps if he's having all these visions, isn't he, with the daggers and the prophecies the witches give him, the visions he sees there, and Banquo's ghost. So all of those things make us feel like perhaps he's a bit unhinged, and therefore that connects perhaps with the sense of being evil. Up to you. Right. Your next task. What I'd like you to do is create a list for each character, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, of their strengths and their weaknesses. Look at how they compare. Think about which one is strongest and which one is weakest in a particular area. So for instance, you might look at the fact that Macbeth is seen as physically strong, and therefore he has a certain sense of respect given to him by his colleagues and his peers. Lady Macbeth's strength, however, might not be physical strength, but mental strength. She says she has what it takes to do the task, whereas Macbeth might be ambitious but doesn't have the illness that comes with it. So I'm going to suggest you pause the video and try and answer this yourselves. 3, 2, 1. Have you paused it? It's going to be really awkward if you don't pause it. Come on, pause it. Okay, we'll move on. So you should have a list now, probably 4 or 5 different things where Macbeth is strong in one area versus Lady Macbeth strong in another. You should have 3 or 4 where he is weak, whereas she is strong. She is weak in other ways. So her weakness might be her ambition, but it could also be her strength. So don't be afraid to use things that might fit into both categories. You need to think about things in the round. Our next task. I would like you to listen to actress Louise Lombard, how she explains the challenges that she had in portraying Lady Macbeth on stage, and some of the quotes that she's come up with are on your I'll get used to it in a minute, the slide. But click on the link in the PowerPoint and you'll find her speech about her interview, if you like, about what it's like to play Lady Macbeth. So I'll give you a moment to click on that. Just up there. So have a click, have a watch, and then come back to me. You done? Good. All right, fine. So the last task I'm going to leave you with today is, now you've had a look at what a professional actress believes. You've had a think of for yourself. You've heard some of my ideas at the very beginning. And what I want you to do now is to really stretch yourselves by coming up with your own opinion, choosing, based on that opinion, one of these paragraph starters. So there's 3 there in orange, yellow and green. And you're going to try and justify that statement. So it may be the case that you don't really agree with any one of them, but you're going to have to pick one. So to pick the one you agree most with and then justify your opinion. Remember, in anything like this where you're interpreting and justifying and explaining, not only must you come across with your own opinions, your own views, but you have to consider other views as well. So make sure you're incorporating an alternative view, and make sure you're including any of the key moments or quotations from the play. Now, to help you, there is a little list of some of the key scenes for Lady Macbeth that are worth reviewing and having a look at and seeing whether there's anything specific quotation-wise or event-wise that you can include to justify your answer. So that's the last thing I'm going to leave you with today. That is our first Macbeth lesson, Year 8. Well done. I hope you've enjoyed it and I hope you've actually got something out of it. So you need to now, once you've done that, use your phone, take a photo, stick it on Google Classroom so I can see what you've written and we can have a feedback about that. Alternatively, you can type it directly in and I will have a read of that online. So your choice, but we need to see something that you've actually done. So it's not just you watching me looking like an idiot on a video. That would be pointless. So make sure you share with us what you've actually done and we can then come back to you with some feedback. All right. Hope you have a great day. See you soon.